So, do we have Paddy here to read out his question on buses? Right.
Let's see.
So on the subject of integration, what would it take to allow us to have a single ticket that worked on buses, on the trains and on the metro? Would make an awful lot of difference to people's journeys, make them much more affordable. So what would it take to do that? And when can we have it?
So we're doing it as quickly as possible for you. It's exactly as I said, you know, it's something that we've already started the work on, and we're moving as quickly as possible. And actually, really, the ultimate aim is to do better than that and say that you should be able to just tap in and tap out and have one fare structure, and you don't even need a ticket or a physical document. The first step in that is the pop card expansion, so that can be used right across the network, and that'll be coming very shortly. I'm hoping, well, very shortly actually. It's a little delayed, and then the next step after that is tap on, tap off. You can do that on buses, and you can do it on some other services, but they're not they're not integrated. And so all of that work is happening now. It takes a lot of investment and a lot of technology in the background that we just haven't had, and a lot of cooperation between different systems, right from the mainline railway through to the bus services and the metro. But all of that is taking place as we speak, and we kicked that work off very quickly because it is how we'll make our system simpler, and ultimately it's how we'll make our system cheaper. You can already do it in some places, so as we open the new Northumberland line, the pop card is accepted on the Northumberland line, it's accepted out to Blaydon, on Northern I think at the moment, but you know, we want to see that expanded, and so we're doing that work right now.
Okay, thank you. Now I don't believe Colin from Stocksfield is here. Nobody is waving at me. Okay, well, shall we move on to the next question, just to let you have a few minutes to get your question. Helen from Wylam. Is Helen from Wylam here? No? Helen's question is quite long, so bear with me. The £1 offer for bus travel for under 21s is appreciated by parents whose children rely on buses to get to and from school. There is a £1 offer to under 21s on trains, but only from Newcastle as far as Blaydon. In places like Wylam, with only one bus an hour and no late buses, the train is the only option, but puts financial constraints on young people travelling to college or work in either direction.
So this is going to be part of that integration that Paddy asked about just before. So that is the key to unlocking the mayor's fares, the £1 fare on the mainline railway further than Blaydon. And it's sort of a complicated question to get your head around, and it's a complicated answer in the sense that it depends oftentimes on how our funding gets to us. And so the reason that that funding is available there is because it's part of the bus network and the bus route, and we're not able to spend it, we're not allowed to spend it on the mainline rail beyond Blaydon at the moment. We're getting more freedom, so as we move towards what we call a kind of an integrated settlement or a single settlement with government, where we as a region are seen as kind of a more independent region over the coming years, we'll get less guardrails about how we spend that money, and then also as we go through our integration process we'll be able to do more of that. But at the moment we just simply don't have the freedom to do it, which is deeply frustrating because, again, I think it's a completely reasonable ask. I think the other thing to mention about things like this, so the mayor's fares, whether they're the £1 or the £2.50, they are expensive, they're a decision. So we have chosen to spend bus service improvement money on keeping the fares low, and the more of that we do, the more expensive it becomes because we have to pay the operator back. effectively, which is why we'll be able to do more when we get control of our buses, because at that point we'll have control of the fare box, we'll know exactly how much the flat cost of the buses is, and then we'll have control of all of the money that comes through the fare box. It makes it simpler for us. So we know that there are gaps like that. We find it frustrating as well, but that's the reason why, and the way that we're fixing it is better integration and more public control. Does that answer the... Well, she's not in the room, but I hope that answers the question.
I hope that answers the question. Thank you. Colin, are you ready? I would say that at this point I may bring in some colleagues from the transport sector. They may wish to put some response in. But please, would you ask your question?
Yeah, so my question is about the linking of the bus and the train timetables, because particularly, well, even in Prudhoe, I mean, it's a long way up the hill for a lot of people, and it's rather frustrating to arrive at the train station to see the bus just having disappeared.
Yeah, and again, it's all down to that integration and the process of integrating it. The truth is that we don't have the power to do that until we get hold of the bus services. But I don't know whether colleagues from rail and bus would like to talk about how and if you talk to each other, and how and if you do that just now, because where we want to get to is we do more of that. And actually, probably not just that, but across the wider region, we would like to get to a point where we have more buses going to train stations, so that people are able to make that modal shift, that change between a bus and a train. I always use the example, so my home is in Felton in northeast Northumberland. My nearest train station is Morpeth. It takes me an hour on the bus to get from Morpeth to Newcastle, but if I could get the bus to the train station, it would take me about 30 minutes. And so that's the sort of integrated decision that we want to start to make. I don't know what the details are here, but I think that example that where I live demonstrates really clearly why we need to do more of this.
Chair, if I can just come in there, I'll introduce myself later, but just very quickly, I'm Daniel Laird from Go North East. It's actually quite a timely question, because one of the main services which we operate in the Prudhoe area is the 686, the local service for Prudhoe and Wylam, and that's the service we operate on behalf of Northumberland County Council. And actually, as recently as the 28th of October, the timetable was changed so that it did actually serve the interchange. It's a starting point. The connections are, for the most part, between 4 and 15 minutes between the train and the bus arrivals for those local journeys, and it's something that we're working with Northumberland Council to progress even further. As I say, it's very early days for that change. We need to see how passengers respond to that and whether people do use it as that local link. But certainly that was an idea that was developed with Northumberland County Council and ourselves. So we're hopeful that will make a difference going forward.
Lovely, thank you. And actually, it's interesting because the 684, isn't it? And the 686 is one of the services that we fund directly through the bus service improvement money. So otherwise, it wouldn't operate without us intervening in that and doing that. And so having it kind of integrated with the train is really important. And I read in my briefing earlier on, because I also, I think we get into talking about the lack of punctuality, lack of reliability of our buses. Quite often, but that's one of the most reliable buses in the whole region, with nearly 90% punctuality and reliability, which is really, really good. So I think when we're often saying it's not, we have to also say when it is, and that's certainly what I was. That's certainly the information that I was provided in advance of today. So thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence from Wylam. There we go.
Hello, sorry, me again.
Councillor Lawrence.
I just wanted to ask you, Kim, we've read a lot about it, but maybe you could tell us what public control of rail and bus will mean for our area, and if there are any projects in the pipeline to improve public transport in Prudhoe.
Yeah, so public control essentially means that the public, you, will have more of a say over where your buses go and when they go there. At the moment, we've got a system whereby there's kind of 3 main bus companies. All of them operate for profit. A lot of the services that you see run across the region are kind of gaps plugged by funding through us, through the Bus Service Improvement Grant and various other funding streams, but our buses at the moment are run for profit. And where we want to get to is them not being so, them being under one umbrella, one brand. We propose the Angel Network as that brand. We will of course consult on that branding, but we want single control over our bus network, which means that we'll ask you about it. We will come to you throughout that process and say, what is it that you need? Do you need more frequency? Do you need later services? Do you need them to be more affordable? Do you need the services to be slightly different? Tweaks like that one we've just heard, where they change the route to make them more convenient. And the answer will be in some parts all three of those things, and it'll be a bit of a journey for us to get there. But public control of buses means that we'll be able to invest the money back into the services and make them run more for you than for profit, and it is as simple as that. GB Rail and public control of rail, I think, is less simple, but the outcome, the ideal outcome, is the same as that. And I think what mayors will get through the devolution bill and through the rail bill is more of a say over those rail services where they specifically impact on our areas, but not full control. Government will have control and we'll have more of a say. However, we've made the pitch in our region to government to say, look, particularly Northern, where it only runs through 3 areas, we want to work directly with Northern to have more of that control so that we're able to run services in the interest of people of our region, because it has less of an impact outside of the region. And so we want more of that. So we'll have a statutory say, but overall control will sit still with government. I would like to have as much of a local say as possible, and hopefully what residents will see from the way that we're doing things now is we want to have more of a conversation with people. So I think quite often in the past, whether it's on transport or other things, I think if we're honest, a consultation looks like the absolute definition of what it has to be and absolutely no more than that. Too often they are too short, they do the very minimum, and they don't properly engage with people on their own terms. And what we're trying to do is to change that, to do things like this, so come out and speak to you and ask you to have a conversation directly. But also, when we did our bus plan, our consultation for our transport plan, we got well over 6,000 responses. The first time ever we had about a 50% split men and women. It's the first time ever. The last time there was one, it was like 36% women and over 40% men. We went out specifically to disability groups. We went out specifically to groups representing black, minority and ethnic people. We went out specifically to groups, to young people. We had a specific young person's accessible survey, and that's because we really want this system to be reflective of what people want. And we have to ask you to bear with us because it takes a bit of time. At the moment, the timeline to get control of our buses, I think, is too long, but we're in it and we're doing it, and we're doing it as quickly as possible. But where we want to get to is that you feel like you play a role in defining what that service looks like and what it does. Thank you. Okay. It's quite a long answer to a short question, I'm sorry. I'll try and be better to keep us to time.
The next question is quite long, so we might be able to balance that out. If I can have the mic back, please. This is another question where I don't think the asker is in the room. I think it's been one that someone's put in anonymous. But it is a good question. For people without access to a car, travel to work at the airport or Kingston Park means travelling into Newcastle only to travel outwards again. A bus route, extend the 686, a suggestion, from Prudhoe to these places would be helpful and enable young people to access employment opportunities. And there is a footnote to that the constituents' own SEN son could not apply for jobs there for that reason, because there is no public transport to the airport.
I think it's a great question. I think it's a great example of the sort of feedback that we want to hear as we make that improvement journey towards public control. But I think at the moment it is a question for our colleagues at the bus company, and something that hopefully they've heard the question and they'll take away. At the moment, unless we directly just fully pay for a service, and as I said, we've made the decision to invest in capped fares, and the result of that has been a huge increase in the number of people using the bus. kids, and particularly those under 22s using the bus. And so we're kind of invested with what we've got, and my priority is to try and keep that in place now for as long as possible. And I've written specifically to the Chancellor in the budget and said, look, this is going well, let's keep doing it, give me the money to keep doing it. But I think as we go along, and I can see colleagues scribbling away for the questions so that they can take away and look at it, we've got to work with our colleagues in the bus companies to try and get those changes that people want to see. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Another one which did not have a name against it, a little bit shorter question this time. Using public transport to get to Cramlington Hospital requires both a train, a bus, taking over an hour, followed by a good 10-minute walk. Can better transport be provided?
It should be, and again, I think we need to start to look at those common sense routes. I think a lot of the time when the routes are set, Cramlington Hospital's not been there that long.
It hasn't.
And the system that we've got for kind of getting appointments. I recently had a couple of years ago. I will make this story quick, I promise. But I broke my hand, and I had treatment everywhere from Cramlington to Alnwick to North Tyneside to Hexham, where I had a scan. And and the only way that I could do that was lift, because I couldn't blink and drive because I broke my hand.
Yes.
Because it physically would not have been possible to manage going to work and also going to those appointments without the kind of goodwill of my family being able to ferry me round. And there are a lot of people in those situations, and so it's those, as I said, common sense routes that public control will help us with. And in the meantime, it's a case of having that constant conversation between us, the council, the bus companies, to see what improvements can be made. And I think looking at things like hospital routes, and to give you a really good example, because they aren't in the room, of why we feel that public control is the way forward for us, rather than going in that direction in another part of the region serviced by another bus company. Only recently, they made the decision to reduce hospital services. And we can't have that. We've got to keep going and improving public transport and accessibility for people.
Yep.
Can I just say something?
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Gannon, who is our cabinet member for transport, but also Gateshead Council leader.
Yeah, Martin Gannon, I lead Gateshead Council, and I sit with Kim on the Combined Authority leading on transport. Sorry about my voice. The point I was wanting to make was to support what Kim is saying. We're going forward with taking bus services back under public control. We did have an integrated transport system, certainly in Tyne and Wigan in the 1980s, before they were deregulated, where buses and metro integrated. And we're confident that will work. Kim's absolutely right. Effectively, we, on your behalf, have the ability to say to the bus operators, that's where you'll operate the buses, that's how frequently, we'll even set the fares. We can set the fares. Now, the point I was wanting to come in on those, that has a cost. Right? Already, a substantial proportion of the income of the bus operators comes from the local authorities. We pay for the concessionary fares, we pay for the subsidised routes, something like about 40%, hundreds of millions of pounds of the bus companies' income comes from the local authorities. So it's dead straightforward. We can say, yes, you must put on a direct bus from Prudhoe to Northumberland Hospital. Well, there's only one person sitting on it. It's going to cost an absolute fortune. So there's a number of points there. We believe, we're confident the system will work. Okay? But there are risks in this, okay? We need to get fares down so it encourages people to use them. We also need people to make the transition. There's nothing wrong with having a car. I've got one. I love it. I go shopping in it. Okay? But if public transport was cheaper and reliable, I would use it for essential journeys. And we need people to do that. Okay?
Thank you. I think we've got one more. We're going to have a break in about 20 minutes. So we've got one more question in this part. Now, it's quite a long question. We have John from Wylam. Is John from Wylam here? No. I'm getting all the long questions tonight, aren't I? There's obviously a theme going on here.
Is that not you, John from Wylam?
Friend John. Maybe more than one John Wylam.
I don't know. I only know one John.
Deny all knowledge because it's a long question. Right. I'm glad you printed this out.
To be fair, John, you would write this question. I could see it happening. I think he secretly has.
Okay, I live in Wylam, and at best during the day there's an hourly service. I think this is an hourly train service you're talking about, isn't it? It's an hourly service. There are frequent cancellations at very short notice, such that I dare not buy a ticket until I see the train has left Hexham. The service then becomes 2 hourly between Hexham and Newcastle. One cannot rely on Northern Rail to provide an adequate service, and as a result, if one is to make a scheduled appointment in town, one frequently ends up driving into Newcastle or going to Cullerton Parkway and then using the metro. Travelling on to other destinations, such as London, it is almost imperative to catch a local train 2 before the ideal one in case of a sudden cancellation. I try to avoid using the car for all the obvious reasons. However, this is made difficult by Northern Rail's failure to deliver an acceptable and reliable service. The service is marginally better, but can the reliability be improved? So Kim, I'm going to start with you, but I appreciate that colleagues here at Northern will be able to pick up on some of the points that is happening from December.
Yeah, I'm going to come to colleagues from Northern because I think it's only fair, but I think, this reflects examples that have been sent to me. People have written to me about these complaints, and those complaints are passed directly to Northern, and we meet very regularly to discuss reliability and punctuality and to try and drive that improvement. And at the same time, I think this is important too. We have also made a bid in our spend and review budget submission to the Chancellor to say we need new trains on Northern. We absolutely need new train stock on Northern to service these areas because the quality of the trains is not good enough. And I know that when Carolyn comes in, that's one of the things that she'll say is a specific issue for them. So we will keep driving that improvement. As I said, we want to have more control over the service, but at the moment that service is delivered by Northern, and we'll keep working to push for and to demand better service on your behalf. But I'll hand over to Carolyn to kind of answer what it is you're doing at the moment.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm from Northern Trains, and so obviously punctuality and reliability of service is really important. It's how we build confidence for our customers. We want people to be confident when they're using the train. And it hasn't been where we wanted it to be, and one of the things we've done is pull together a kind of multi-year plan to be able to address that. As Mira said, we've in direct conversations with the individual authorities on the area that we work with, and also with Councillor Gannon and colleagues through the Rail North Committee to kind of keep us focused on that and keep to task. But that's a multi-year plan that's looking at quite a range of things, and the first phase of that is really about stabilising things because cancellations have been too high, but we've been working really, really hard to drive those down. And you can see that coming through on this route, but we'll always be working harder to do more. And as the Mayor's alluded to, just covering quite a few range of things in that plan, and I won't talk for too long, but looking at things like our people, we've done some things around organisational changes, so we've got the right leadership in place to help drive forward those improvements and have a really, really detailed focus, making sure that we're helping our train crew be available all the time. He touched on trains, and we have some of the oldest trains in the country. Many of them are approaching their milestone birthdays of sort of 40 years old. So we have to work really hard to keep that fleet going and keeping them out available for customers all the time. And anybody that's got an older car will know it's exactly those same challenges. So working really hard to keep the current fleet out and available for customers, but also those new trains are really, really important. So we really do appreciate the support that we've had from others in the room and beyond in terms of making the case for those. So we are actually in procurement for that at the moment. But it is a multi-year plan, and we're really, really keen to keep talking with people and making sure that you're holding us to account as we deliver.
you want to say anything about timetable change and separating Durham Post?
I knew there was a reason.
I have my uses.
So you guys were forgetting things earlier on, I'm forgetting things now. There is a big timetable change in December, and that comes around with changes around the East Coast Main Line. So we've been able to use that as an opportunity to address some of the gaps in timetables along this route in particular, and improve services into Newcastle. So hopefully customers will, and people using services along the route will see that. So that comes into play on the 14th of December, she says. Double check it.
That's right.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have about 10 minutes, so I can probably take 1 or 2 questions from the floor, if anyone would like to. So maybe 1 question?
Oh, you've got a lot more than 1.
I know, but 1 tonight, okay? 1 at the moment.
I've come up here really on the wrong pretext. I was under the impression this was something else.
Okay.
Okay.
What did you think you'd come to?
I've come to something about Northern, go north east.
Oh, right. Yeah.
With the service and about the conditions of the way it's running at the moment, with buses being cancelled, buses being a half an hour late, trackers not working. There's a whole raft of problems. I've got such a list in here. I mean, it's all for them, and if they can't fix it, this system isn't going to work. I mean, you mentioned safety earlier on. Saturday night I was coming back from Riding Club, and I got off at West Wyland, and all of a sudden a young lass, about 20-year-old, came flying off the bus, panicking. You mentioned how the field, not safe. She was expecting the 10B to go around West Wyland, and it doesn't after a certain time. Lots of people don't know that. It's not advertised for people to understand that.
And then so she gets off the bus in the wrong place, presumably with a distance to walk.
Panic stricken. Lots of things like that. You've got buses you've got a 10 that terminates in Prudhoe. That bus comes there, turns back around and goes back to Newcastle. Friday night, the bus came, I got on it, it had on the front Hexham, terminating in Prudhoe. Little things like that.
They're not little,
then the drivers get shirty with people because they say, no, we terminate in Prudhoe. But your bus says Hexham. What are you going to do? This is a service that people are relying on. I only use it on the weekends, Friday nights and Saturday nights when I go out and listen to live music. Being able to rely on getting home after being out at night is imperative.
It is.
There's buses that get cancelled at the Metro Centre, get turned around because they're running late, but don't go through the town, so there's people sitting in the town waiting for a bus. The bus coming. How do they get home? Maybe somebody who lives at Hexham. Where do they go from there? I've got lots more.
Well, actually, so you are going to get a chance. So we're going to do this bit of the session for about another 20 minutes, and I'm going to give you an overview, but I'm really conscious that colleagues from Go North East are here. So you're going to have this little bit, then a little break, and then I'm going to get out the way, and those more specific questions can be answered by our colleagues from Go North East. So if it's all right to give a couple more people a chance to ask a question while I'm here, I'll do that and then hand over to them. But I've seen, again, Daniel like furiously scribbling, so I'm pretty sure he'll be able to come straight to those questions. But it does show why we need to look at the way we run our buses, and I totally agree with everything you've said, and it's reflective of experiences that we hear from people, particularly in Tyne Valley, North East Northumberland, not just with Go North East but with other companies as well. And so we'll let them answer after. So you have come to the right thing, but unfortunately you've had to sit through my boring bit before you get to Go North East.
So thank you, because I think our colleagues here from Go North East will take the points away.
I'm Val Argent from the Stocksfield end of the map. We've had a lot about Wylam and Prudhoe, but Stocksfield is very close. And there are many people who have been disenfranchised from any sort of public transport by the cancellation of the 613 bus, which would have given people on New Ridley Road a link to the number 10 going to Newcastle or Hexham. And since I've recently given up driving, I'm now without any sort of transport except what my husband very kindly provides. And there are quite a number of people who would rely on that service if it was available. It's only got to change its route very slightly from the blue route on the Slaley bus route to take in Appledean Crossroads, and New Ridley Road, and take quite a big hinterland of people who maybe need some transport.
Yeah, I think that that's one where, again, I'm going to say that it's a really reasonable question. We've got colleagues from Go North East here who I think after the break will address that one as well. Again, I can see them kind of furiously scribbling away. But I think on the wider premise, where we need to get to is we don't have these bus black spots. We just shouldn't have them. I was out recently in rural County Durham, so not in Northumberland, but I was in this lovely village, not a particularly small village, and there was a bus stop, and because now this is what I do for my job, I went and just had a little look just out of interest to see what bus service they had, and the only service that went through that whole village was a school bus. And that's becoming a more and more common occurrence, and it is not reasonable to rely on everybody to drive. It's not reasonable to expect that in a region like ours that is as rural as ours, that is 3,500 square miles, that every single person will be able to rely on every single bus every single day. There will be some places where it is more difficult. It is just common sense. But we should not have villages and sometimes small towns that have complete black spots when it comes to buses. It's not acceptable, and it will ultimately shape people's decisions on things like where they live, and you shouldn't be making your decisions like that. You should be able to be where you want to be and get to where you need to get to. Thank you.
Okay.
The vast majority of people rely on public transport.
Yeah.
I mean, my household has a car, but there's me, my wife and my daughter. My daughter and my wife don't drive, so that's 2/3 of my household.
There's more people use the bus than any other form of transport, is the truth.
Okay.
Hi Kim, it's Steve Underwood here.
Oh, hello.
Okay, cool, thank you. I've got quite a specific question linked to a proposal to close a couple of first schools here, and the implication on travel for affected children, families, in particular, how that may affect sort of lower income families in both of those locations. I'll just read out the question.
Of course, yeah, please do.
If the proposed closures of Nickley First School and Prudhoe Castle First School are to go ahead, many families will face longer journeys to school, higher daily transport costs and limited safe travel options for young children. The community is particularly concerned about the impact of these changes for lower income families. What steps will your office take to ensure that communities aren't left to absorb the impacts on their own, and that transport affordability and safety are fully considered before any changes affecting children's daily journeys are made?
Yeah, so I think that this is essentially a question for Northumberland Council, who are obviously consulting on the closure of those schools at the moment, and I sincerely hope that that consultation will be thorough and will be properly well run. I know that there are colleagues from Northumberland Council, councillors in the room and also officers who are here hearing those questions, and how children get to school has to be a big part of that. You know, shutting children off from access to a primary school or a first school and making it essentially so that they can only go there if their parents drive is the absolute opposite of what we want to see. We want to see every child be able to get to school without having to use a car. That's the absolute ideal, isn't it? And so what I would say is we'll be watching that really closely. We'll be looking at it through a transport lens, but also through an access to education lens. And what I would urge is to make sure that you are, you're all obviously very interested people who are taking an active interest in coming out on a Monday evening to talk about transport and to talk about your community. Encourage your friends and your family members and those who might be affected to take part in those consultations, because I think far too often people see them and they think it's not for me to fill that in. It absolutely is. Get people to take part in those consultations, because it's really critical that you have your say in the proposed closures and in the decisions that are made around that. And we'll be keeping a watching brief and working with the council to make sure that transport is something that is properly considered as a part of it. So thank you for your question. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I think it's really important to say that I don't have control over education, but we don't have a say in it, and we aren't a statutory consultee. But I think you're right in the sense that when these decisions are made, we have to look at them through a variety of lenses, and how children get to school is one of them that is really critical.
Thanks very much, Lou. Just on your point of responding to the consultation, there is a community event on the 22nd and 23rd. If anyone needs support.
For anyone who didn't hear that, there's a community event on the 22nd and 23rd of November.
Yes.
Is it in here?
Mickley First.
At Mickley First. A Mickley Social Club. Okay. And so, yeah, get along to that.
Thank you for that. I'm going to try and keep moving, Kim, because I think we've got 2 more questions or 3 more questions, if you can squeeze them in. So if I can get you to...
Sorry, yes.
3 more questions, I think, and if I can get you to squeeze your answers.
I can do that.
Excellent.
She says, confident.
Hello. There is a significant number of children or young adults going to Gateshead College, which is one of the major suppliers of trade courses in the area.
Yes.
And to actually get there, it takes them sometimes an hour and 3/4 at one end of the day, an hour and 3/4 at the other end of the day, and that's if the buses do turn up. There is a number of the young people who evacuate the courses after the first, second year because of the transport links and the cost of it. And I really do feel that we should be supporting these young people if we want to get them into being productive members of society. And at the moment, we're not doing our best for them.
I think it's a really fair question, and looking at those routes again and integration is going to be really critical as we make our journey towards public control, and looking at how do people actually use our bus services, and that is data that we're able to have. We know when people switch buses, we know when people change modes, and so then using that then to design better services is really important. Your point on cost is one of the reasons why we capped the bus fares for under 22s at £1, because what we can't have is young people feeling excluded from education, feeling like they can't go and get those really critical skills because they can't afford the bus. And so making it so it is £1 to get a single ticket on the bus for under 22s is so important to that future and to making sure that those young people do get that access. So we'll work on getting those journey times down. Again, we've got colleagues from Go North East here who I know will be able to answer in more detail on some of the specifics of the bus routes, but as far as I'm concerned, we will keep that fare down as long as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a lady, yes, with her hand up there.
Still wasn't that short. I'll get better.
Hi, my name is Sean. As a young lady getting the train from Hexham to Prudhoe, I'm not seeing the conductors quiet and safe and moving.
Not seeing a conductor safe and yeah. One of the things that, so the focus, sorry, do you have more? No. Yeah, so one of the things that when I've said safety on public transport, we're working, we can just do that, for example, across the metro network in Tyne and Weir. We can just go on and make those improvements ourselves. We've already put more staff on the metros, we will be putting more lighting, CCTV gate lines and so on. But we are working together with the train companies and also with the bus companies to try and see those improvements wider as well in the accessibility of stations. But I think it's important that they hear what you want to see staff, because what we often know is it is that kind of uniformed professional, that visible deterrent that makes people feel more safe and also acts as a deterrent for bad behaviour and antisocial behaviour. And I think it's also fair, whilst we saw an absolutely horrendous incident on an LNER train only a few weeks ago, the presence of a train guard saved lives. It really did. He saved lives because he was there. And I think we should all be taking that as a lesson. Thank you. God forbid we ever see anything like that ever again, but he saved lives.
Thank you.
Was there one more?
Right, there's another 2 questions then.
Oh, 2 more. Gosh, I'll have to be quicker.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have a ticket to Ben, but I'm putting a question, but as you asked, I've got
You're very welcome.
So my question's about accessible transport.
Yeah.
So up until about 5 years ago, I could drive, I could walk along the wagon way between Prudhoe and Wylam. If I wanted to, I could walk up the hill from Wylam to Prudhoe. I can't do that anymore. I thought it was interesting you're talking about the hospital in the east of Northumberland. If I have appointments, I'm reliant on taxis. I wondered if you got any thoughts about, I'm aware around the country there are flexible forms of public transport which people can book into. I don't know how it works, but I think with the type of geography we've got here, it seems to me like that would be a solution to some of the transport problems we've got.
Yeah, and various different types of community transport and solutions like that for accessibility are all part of our thinking as we particularly look at the journey of bus reform and getting more control over our buses, but that is a long journey. And what you'll see very shortly is we're going to launch an accessibility survey, so we will do one of those consultations where we push out really far and wide and say, look, how do we improve this for people? We certainly know that, again, Northern will be able to speak to this along the Tyne Valley, not all of the train stations are accessible. We desperately want to see improvements to that. It is just not acceptable any longer that people can't go to a train station and be able to just get on a train. We have to do that, and so we're pushing the government to say, look, your programme of accessibility, spend it quickly, let us spend it. We want control over those stations so we can spend it and we can make them more accessible. But more broadly, we're asking you what will make it better. And so that kind of on-demand transport, it's not something I would look at for a full bus service, but I think it is something that when we take disability and accessibility into mind, we need to be considering as part of a community solution.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got our last question. What we will then do is have a little bit of a break, rearrange the chairs and get our colleagues up from Go North East and from Northern, and at that point we'll say goodbye to Kim. So this lady here.
Thank you.
And then...
Hello, my name's Christine Rollinson and I live at the top of the hill at Prudhoe since 2011 when the 604 bus route was stopped. I have been fighting along with others to try and get the 2 locations, West Wylam Estate and Oaklands Estate, back on the route. I hear that the West Wylam Estate's on, however I didn't know till this gentleman spoke that it's restricted. Why can't we have the 10B route now coming up through Oaklands, through South Road and back down to Low Prudhoe, and from the start in the morning till the last bus at night?
Okay,
I would like to be able to go out whatever hours I choose and not what Go North East tells me I should go out.
I think that's completely reasonable because I like to go out when I like to go out as well. I'm going to defer to my colleagues at Go North East for the specifics of those routes, but again, they're going to do a session. So after the break, I know again I've seen them scribbling down the details of that specific question, and I'm going to leave it to them. But I think again, broadening the length of day, the idea that you couldn't do a job and get the bus to some places and to and from some places because it doesn't go after a certain time, that's not how it should be. So I absolutely think your question's totally reasonable, and so is your request, but I'm going to leave it to colleagues who run those bus networks to kind of answer the specifics. Do you want to chip in now? Yes, of course.
So just really quickly on the West Wylam evening and early service question, it's something that was considered with the introduction of the 10B to West Wylam. We have pretty much doubled or even tripled the number of journeys going through West Wylam compared to when it was just the 686 local service, and of course we've restored the connection to Metro Centre in Newcastle. We originally did have plans to have the 10B service in later at night, and unfortunately it's just not safe with the level of parking around that area, and I think as we work more closely with local authorities and with combined authority, we're going to have a real think about how we use space within our communities, because accessibility to bus services, as someone's already made, is a really good point. How we use our highways and protect space for those buses is something that unfortunately we've not made as much progress on.
So what you're saying is that service is restricted because in the evenings people come back, they park their cars along the roadsides and the bus can't get down the road?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Cars there before 2011.
Yeah, so I think that this is something, it sounds to me like needs to be taken out of the room, and I can see again colleagues from Northumberland Council taking notes and saying, right, how do we fix this problem, which is why things like this are so good, because that's really specific but it's obviously affecting you, and it would take for the council, the bus service, to work together to look at how you resolve that. So thank you for asking your question.
Just a quick one.
Very, very quick.
It's about the bus stops down around West Wylam. I was just listening to people before, and a lot of the bus stops are not there. The drivers won't stop because there's not a sign up saying it's a bus stop.
We will pick that up in the second half.
We're always
okay.
bus stops.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. What we're going to do is have a short break.